How's everyone going? So I'll do a quick video here. So I see this seems to come up a lot. Working on the steering box here for my Lister powered Liner Rough Rider side dumpy, and steering boxes seem to be a problem on these. I think just because no one services them. And no one seems to be able to find bearings for them, which I had that same predicament. The original bearing's like a 3-piece. You got this, and you've got your ball bearings going there, and this is your other half. I'll sit up that way. Create a bearing. This part is normally in the housing. This small ring is pressed onto the shaft there. Now, if the surfaces aren't too bad here, you could just buy new ball bearings. That's easy enough. But mine, the previous owner had driven it until it absolutely destroyed everything. So, obviously, new balls. Not going to fix anything there. Couldn't find any bearings. The same similar ones were in this Land Rover kit, which a lot of people mentioned would work. Doesn't work. Land Rover stuff is too small. Land Rover steering box also does not fit in. This is not a Land Rover steering box, as a lot of people suggested to me. But anyway, the solution was we matched up the closest taper roller bearing that was available to me, at least in Australia, and machined the shaft down because the ID was smaller, so then the shaft diameter was too big. There's only like one little spot of the shaft here. I had to make different size there, so it's not like I had to turn the whole shaft. I think I had to shorten it a little bit because the bearings were a little bit longer. I can't quite remember there. I might have pictures of that I'll insert. And then the OD, the outer diameter, was larger, so I got this housing line board. I thought about doing it on a lathe, but the bloke down the road had a line boring machine, so way easier. So then that diameter in there had to be a little bit larger by about 2 mil or something. Dimensions weren't too far off. Obviously that's it together. The original outer shims was like this one, will still work, but the spacer shims for down in here, I guess you could use them. They just slop around a little bit, so you have to line them up. But because I didn't have any more of these shims, I sort of accurately measured and made a spacer so it's basically shimmed without needing shims, and that'll work fine for me. Yeah, so if anyone has one of these, and which seems to be common, and they can't get bearings for it, that is the solution. So the bearing I use, Timken 3025 or 205. Don't think these part numbers are any significance. Oh yeah, 30205M. And that's what I ended up using. There's other things that are worn. See, that's all worn down. But I don't particularly see a problem with just flipping that around, because it just, well, I don't have a missing parts, but from what I gather, it just goes in this little taper here. So I turn that around, that'll be good enough. If I really wanted to, I could weld this up and lathe it back, but I don't think it's worth the effort. The only other thing I just noticed, some process of starting to put it back together. So in here, if you're not familiar, there's all ball bearings, these new ones. And they locate into here and travel around. So let's back up in here. So the ones I've worked on, not this particular steering box, but similar design, you take this off here, grease up all your balls, and start feeding them in, filling up the tube. This one here looks like you would put the balls in, fill the whole thing up, and then have to have it assembled, because if you put it in two halves and this goes down, there's no way of getting to these bolts that I can see that's practical. So I think what I have to do is, because this sort of tapers down to nothing, I think I'll take this bearing off, slide the shaft backwards, put this in, screw the shaft onto it until this goes to this end, then slide the whole assembly out, put my bearing back together, and then put it back together. So far, I think that'll work. Yeah, that's about it. So I'll just share that information. And lots of people told me Land Rover stuff would work, and none of the series of Land Rover stuff, in fact, works, at least on this particular one, which seems to be in a number of them. I don't know, I'm sure different models have different steering boxes. I did buy a whole Land Rover steering box to put in initially. You could make it work. It is a bit shorter, which you could make longer, and it mounts up differently, so you would have to mount it differently, which is not the end of the world. Yeah, righto. I'll put in some pictures of machining it if I have them, and I'll put this thing back together, and I might share what I find with putting this thing back together. I'll see how I go. Just in case anyone is interested, this is the spacer I machined up to make work. So if we find another one there, you can see the bearing diameters not that much different, but enough to get a machine it out. And then just knock this back. You can see it's just standard tapered roller bearings, easy enough. Get that out of there, which is of course a little bit tight. Anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. There we go. So then just all slides out the end there. So I think I'll have to take that off to get that on. Feed it all back together. Yeah. See what happens.